Hello, loves. Today I have compiled quite a few good stories. Let's get started. Story: several toxic teenage relationships, one marriage, and one recent failed serious relationship. Later, I'm going into IOP. I hope I'm making the right decisions for myself. I think intensive therapy and regiment is the only thing that can save me. I've made so many mistakes, been such a toxic, codependent, unreliable, manipulative, cheating, lying piece of shit since I began having romantic relationships. I seem so put together and well-meaning in the outside that even my bestest friend that knows me inside out since I was 7 years old is shocked by my decision to be inpatient. But she doesn't know the turmoil. The amount of hate I have for myself and my decisions and actions. The lack of control I have with them. The chronic emptiness that leaves me unknown as a human being with myself. Everyone thinks I have it all together, graduated with a STEM degree though struggling to go back for graduate school, have a solid hybrid job that pays decent and is accommodating, own a house and pay my own bills. But my relationship with myself and with boys have always been volatile. I put so much of myself into a relationship and expect the exact same back, and when I don't receive it I feel abandoned. I don't have parents, they're alive, just not present in my life since they are the cause of my borderline personality disorder, and very few friends, so my main support system was my relationship. This worked fine for a while. When I was a kid 15 to 17 years old, I had an on-off online relationship with a slightly older teenager halfway across the US. He cheated on me and showed me true romantic heartbreak at that young age. We got back together but would lie, and eventually I cheated and realized I preferred touch, so I left him for someone I met my senior year of high school. We had similar interests and got along well enough, though it was never forever material. I like to imagine each relationship is. His parents were racist and unbecoming, ultimately leading to our explosive breakup where they made him break up with me over the phone, and my best friend and her boyfriend had to physically restrain me from cutting up my legs further. I had 2 online relationships soon briefly in between where I did the same thing when they chose to leave me, so it turned into a habit after feeling abandoned then. He got back together with me after he moved away to college, saying he never actually wanted to leave me and that it was mainly his parents' doing. But he never visited me and I was losing interest in pursuing something that didn't feel fulfilling, so I met someone else at my own college. He was 27, I was 18, so you can already imagine how that went. He was emotionally controlling and could be abusive, but I'm sure so was I because my BPD had already begun fully becoming active at that point. We were terrible for each other and it felt wrong at one point to be with someone so much older, had no money, had no real job prospects, dropped out of college, while I had transferred to an even better uni. So I began to cheat on him with someone else my age at my school who was going for engineering. I was blinded by the incompatibilities because we just enjoyed spending time together and sleeping together, until he couldn't take it anymore about a year later. I know, insanity. This was also his first real relationship and I guess love. I can't say I truly loved him though, but still I left 28 years old my boyfriend and pursued him fully. My borderline personality disorder was first truly triggered around here, I think, because at this age I began drinking alcohol. My friends and I would hit the clubs often since we went to a party school, and one time he bought me the wrong drink and I completely lost it. Yelling, temper tantrum, pounding his chest. We ended up breaking up in 5 months because our differences became apparent in a real relationship and I did not want him. He didn't fight it. I joined Tinder very soon after, and that's when I met my husband. He was docile, calm, tolerant. Very different than a lot of the relationships I had been in. I love-bombed him and he love-bombed me back out of loneliness. He had never been in a relationship before. Never been in love before. I thought it was perfect, there was no history, no baggage, no competition. He was all mine. So I held on to him until I realized his calmness was a lack of emotion. He didn't have the emotional capacity to assure me the way my borderline personality disorder needed. I began to cheat a year in, purely textual, but still cheating. He was a workaholic overachiever at a big firm that worked long hours, so it was easy to At one point, I was even selling nudes for extra money, which was a bonus to the validation. He forgave me every time he found out after I begged, pleaded, and cried my eyes out. The closest we ended up divorcing was about 6 months into our marriage after I already cheated once after we said our vows. I had a straight-up emotional affair for a month. I broke it off with him to save my marriage and stayed away from cheating for about 2 years. I think I was generally happy and pretty stable. Stress from work, the borderline personality disorder, came out. I was normal outside of that for the most part, but it may have been a mask. I was not really transforming my feelings when I was sober, so when I was drunk and lost inhibition, anger and violence came out. He still didn't leave me. Around 4.5 years and I realized I didn't really love this man. I just loved his complacency. He did not challenge me, he did not encourage me to improve. I did not want to be married to him forever, so I once again went out to seek if the grass was greener. It was. I met a gem of a man, also online. I wanted him to commit to me so bad I pushed his boundaries and did every single borderline personality disorder symptom in the book to keep him around. In the midst of that, I left my husband. I was not someone he should be with, and vice versa. The same day my online affair left me because of the borderline personality disorder rages, I downloaded Hinge. My ex-husband was still living with me, partially because he did not want to leave and partially because he needed time to process and find a place of his own. We had developed a serious codependency, which we still kind of have to this day. I met someone else a few days into the dating app, another lonely man who needed love and never had a serious, deep adult relationship despite being 30. We became attached at the hip, me using him as a crutch for my pending divorce and validation. He began promising things, and after my husband moved out 3 months later, we fully began our relationship. I had divulged I highly suspected I had borderline personality disorder and that I did not operate nor function emotionally like a normal human being. He accepted without really knowing what that entailed, claiming he had a mood disorder too. Another 3 months go by and I am obsessed with him. He was by far the most attracted I was to any man from my past, and we clicked on so many levels. I did notice something was emotionally off about him, but he was always so kind, willing to give in to my tests that I took it all for granted. This past week I split on him twice after drinking. I did everything from scream, hit him, called him 37 times in a row, and made him drive to my place while sleep-deprived at 11 p.m. to prove his love for me. Most of which I do not even remember because I blacked it out. He woke the next morning and left while I was at work. Went to his parents' house where he probably told them everything. 3 days later he breaks up with me over a 30-minute phone call. That was yesterday. I've always contemplated suicide, but never as hard as I had done recently. I'm 26 and terrified of the 27 Club. The 3 days he was taking space I was going insane with emptiness. I had never been alone for this long, and that man was with me at least 5 days of the week, even the week prior. It felt jarring to me that someone could say they love you so much, spend so much time with you, promise you a future, then revoke it all in 3 days and 30 minutes. If you made it this far, just know I hate myself every day. I hate this borderline personality disorder. I hate that I was abandoned and unloved during my most formative years, and this is who I became to cope. I want to kill her and be born anew. I had been in therapy since my divorce, but truthfully it's done such baby steps in my healing it doesn't feel good enough. I'm destroyed. I don't know who I am nor where I want to be. I don't even have the motivation to make any changes. I wanted a healthy, happy relationship with him, and I lost it all. I've lost everything, and now I'm alone. My biggest fear, everything I wanted to avoid. During the 3 days he was giving me space, I did such a deep dive on BPD to confirm that is really what was wrong. I read maybe every single post on the sub and found so much support and community. I felt like I could have wrote every single one. I also think I found the answer. It seems like many of you have success with cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and more serious cases might need hospitalization, but I'm hoping that I am self-aware enough for Institute of Physics. Give me any feedback, thoughts, criticism that you want. I know I am a horrible person and I kind of want to hear it. I want to hear it because I know I want to change. I'm done with her and I'm ashamed of her, but I know I can't do it alone. I need something more, a lot more friends. Friends support me and help regulate and redirect my thinking, but I need something more intensive. I also don't want to be too dependent on them instead. Let me know your experiences recovering if you'd like. Story, AITA for saying my best friend likes sex. My 22F, best friend, 22F, let's call her and I are currently drifting apart after 10 plus years of friendship. I thought it started 2 months ago, but holds grudges from a year ago. 3 months ago, I started dating my current boyfriend, Bob, 24M. Bob was the first person I dated in years. Before dating, I introduced Bob to my friend group, platonically. Bob became my and Anne's close friend. We hung out daily, had sleepovers together, and eventually, Bob started courting me. I wasn't big on relationships, so Bob said we would go with the flow. Bob and I started spending time without Anne, although still hanging out with Anne daily. Anne noticed and made comments about how she felt like the third wheel, but I reassured her that she was my number one priority. She was just busy with work, dates, etc. Bob and I hid the fact that we became friends with benefits at first so things wouldn't be awkward in our friend group if it didn't work out. After Bob and I became serious, I told our friends. Most called it since we were flirty and cuddled up frequently. That's normal among our affectionate friend group, but Bob was more affectionate with me than others. I confessed to secretly dating Bob and became visibly upset since I didn't tell her sooner. She said we were sneaking around her house to kiss and that it was disrespectful to do that under her roof. After a couple of days, normal Anne was back. The only difference was that she was seeing her ex again, who just broke up and was obviously not over his ex, kept his ex's notes on his wall and her photos in plain view. I told Anne he was using her as a rebound and she assured me she wouldn't get hurt since she only saw him as a friend and for lonely nights. I resigned and Anna kept seeing him until her pregnancy scare. She tried reaching out to him since she was ovulating and the plan B wouldn't work, but he ignored her for days, saying he needed time to get everything straight. She told him she was keeping the baby if pregnant, but he could give up parental rights if he wanted. Bob and I assured Anne that we were in it together, but for the next 3 weeks, and constantly stressed about how she knew she was pregnant. I tried calming her by telling her she was experiencing common Plan B side effects and stress, but, on the off chance that she was pregnant, she would have a house to raise the kid. This made her feel better for 2 weeks, but in the 3rd week, she repeated that she was nauseous, bloated, etc. When I tried reassuring her, she kept saying, "I know, but what if?" I begged her to eat, even just a little. She kept listing off symptoms and I confirmed that all are normal side effects and said if it was me, I would just chalk it up to the Plan B. And told me I was being judgmental, so I apologized, saying I didn't mean to, I just meant that I personally would be denying the idea of pregnancy. And stopped sharing any information about the PS with me and started confiding in Bob, saying she didn't trust me anymore. The test was negative and the pregnancy scare saga closed, but Anne refrained from telling me about her life and I told her I would work to gain her trust. A month later, Anne started seeing someone and wanted to introduce him to me and Bob. I was in the middle of an online exam while Bob and some of our other friends pre-gamed together before we went clubbing. Everyone was having fun while I tuned them out. Anne's boyfriend, Chu, was making jokes and small talk with me when he made a joke about being a virgin and smirked at me. I thought this was a funny little jab at me since I'm the only virgin in our friend group. Before this night, Chu had become acquainted with Bob via Anne's phone and Anna texted Bob about their sexcapades while he was with me. Because of this, I knew that Chu wasn't a virgin, so I laughed sarcastically, saying hee hee, haw, haw. Chu said, "What? You don't believe me?" With the biggest shit-eating grin on his face, so I said nah, smirking back, saying Anna likes sex. Anna said that she could be with someone celibate for religious reasons and I agreed, but said that everyone in our friend group likes dick, even me, the virgin. Bob proclaimed, especially the guys, and said, yeah. Don't know why someone would be celibate if not religion, while smirking at me. We laughed and I focused on my exam while Chu and ran to the store. Later, our friend passed around her phone with her dad on it. I said, huh? He kind of looks like Q. Because they looked almost identical. Another friend said he really does, and then and Chu got awkward, but I didn't understand why. When we were out at the club and was acting weird, but Chu was having fun. I asked Anna what was wrong, and she said she wanted to leave. And said that I made her sound like a sex maniac and that I called Chu a felon when Chu's mom is a felon. I was confused and asked what she meant, and she said that our friend's dad was a felon. I said that I did. Story, AITA for not wanting to move in with my girlfriend yet. I 31 years old finally finished school recently and started on my career. My work schedule is both extremely flexible and inflexible because it's largely determined by the needs of the children and families I'm assigned to. I met 31 years old my girlfriend almost a year ago to the day online. After a couple of dates, we decided to just be friends. This was before I finished school, and with all the stress I was under with that, family, and some medical issues, I was in a really bad place and was not a good person, let alone a friend. She stuck by me though and recognized my struggling, knowing that's not who I really was. The fall into the winter was extremely rocky for us, but we became best friends in truth after her dog passed unexpectedly. She had been extremely depressed, and her house was in bad shape. She finally let me get close enough to help, and I helped her get things kickstarted, which cemented our friendship even more. At this point, I had started developing strong feelings for her again, but she had previously said she wasn't ready, and it was hard, but I understood, especially after how rocky things had been and that it had largely been my fault. We kept getting closer though, and finally in March, after hanging out more, she admitted she was starting to develop feelings for me. We didn't put a label on things because neither of us was ready, and we didn't want to jinx things. She also has some pretty severe relationship trauma among other trauma that made labeling things particularly scary. Then around the first half of April, we talked about it again and decided we both wanted to be poly. At this point, we began referring to ourselves as each other's partners. The poly dating separately was going well, and our relationship was strong. She mentioned she might be open to the idea of being nesting partners. We decided non-hierarchical originally, and we both agreed it would be something we'd be open to sometime in the future. Things continued to progress. She had a big dip in her mental health but was finally back on medications after not being able to afford them. She even said I could think of her as my girlfriend and talk about her as such. This was a really big deal for her, and it meant the world to me. Now, this whole time I'd been casually looking for apartments relatively near my office. She lives an hour away from where I do currently, but she has car issues and staggering debt. A big chunk is private student loans. I enjoyed the drive, so I would just come out to her all the time, multiple times a week before I was working, and nearly every weekend once I was. I'm not holding this against her, I stand by it, and I would do it again. I have zero regrets about the driving. I'm only mentioning it to establish how frequently because that will become important momentarily. Now I have to drive a lot for work. I'm talking 1,000 miles or more per month in my personal vehicle, and that's just work. My office is due south of me, so it's just as far from her as I am. Also, because of the way I need to be able to be flexible with my scheduling, there are days I may need to go in the morning for an hour or two, then I'm off work until I have a meeting later in the afternoon or evening. That means I'd have to drive over an hour to get home if I was living with her and an hour back for the meeting. Alternatively, I'd have to schedule personal stuff in town during that interim. That's fine, and I'm happy to figure it out. The problem is I'm still in training, and I'm not going to know how that scheduling is going to work for me until I've been carrying my own cases for a while, which is going to take no less than 8 months. The other issue is we get reimbursed for our work mileage minus commute, but it's based on whether the destination is closer to the office or your home. I've decided this is really a non-issue for me as the commute isn't that much different, and it's a bad idea to think of the mileage reimbursement as anything more than paying for gas and maintaining my vehicle. Finally, the housing rental market here sucks something awful. I was only able to find one decent apartment complex and one great one that wasn't income restricted and was taking waitlists. The waitlists are a minimum of 6 months long, and the one for the great complex has an additional $300 fee that rolls into your deposit when you agree to move into the style of unit you wanted when it becomes available. If you opt out, you lose that $300 priority waitlist. So I need to decide pretty much about now if I want to try and get into this place, which I did, and I was maybe 2 miles from my office. A couple of weeks ago, she seemingly jokingly mentioned moving in. Don't remember the phrasing, but it was the timing and the tone. Then she brought it up again as a way for me to save money, and I agree it would help me save a lot, and I do in fact want to live with her. She still has some major issues with depression though, and she still can't maintain her house by herself. Dishes stay in the sink for over a week if I don't do them. There are half-filled drinks in plastic cups all over her room. Laundry everywhere and never gets done, and she doesn't shower every day, but her personal hygiene is otherwise good. The bathroom is nasty, although she did finally start cleaning the sink yesterday. I don't mind helping her clean. In fact, for months I begged her to let me help more, and she refused, only finally recently beginning to relent. I know doing everything for her won't help her, but I was hoping once it didn't seem as overwhelming, she wouldn't feel as crushed by how monumental a task it seemed. And really, despite how I've described it, it could be cleaned in the solid day of cleaning to sparkling cleanliness. I'm happy to help her with this. I don't mind taking a majority share of keeping the house clean. I can't help but think long-term though, and if I'm away on business for a few days, or if I'm so slammed at work I'm not able to do as much, that there's going to be half-eaten food and dirty dishes everywhere. None of this bothers me right now. I'm even staying whole weekends with her. She is in therapy, and it seems to help, I think. Before I continue that though, I need to jump back. Sorry, I'm on mobile, and formatting is a giant pain. I still live with my parents. I've never had my own place and largely don't have control of my living space. My room, which is the only private space I have, is regularly violated even after trying to explain how badly damaging to my mental health it is. I have wanted to live on my own for so long but haven't been able to afford it until now. To have control over my own space, organize things in a way that works best for me, and not having to worry about what someone else thinks. I have not had this freedom, and it is something I feel very strongly about. That being said, combined with the other wall of text above, I didn't think we were ready to move in together. I think it's too early in our relationship, and we're having disagreements related to communication. We had previously had an argument where she told me I didn't support her, and I didn't try hard enough to support her. I handled this calmly. I asked questions to try and understand why she felt this way. I listed the ways I thought I was supporting her and asked how to improve. She couldn't tell me, she had no answer for me. We eventually moved on, and things were good again. Then, when I tried to talk to her about all this after discussing it with my therapist, who said I can't control how she reacts, she absolutely lost it on me. Raging, crying, yelling, telling me I don't do enough and telling me she can't get over me not wanting to move in, and that I'm a giant asshole. Granted, I butchered the delivery, and frankly, she was right to be a little upset with me. However, I handled that calmly, if extremely upset and crying too, as I gathered my things from around her house. Finally, I asked if she really wanted to end things this way while we're both sobbing, and she said no. I stayed a while, sitting in bed with her until she calmed down and fell asleep, then I left. I largely gave her space because she told me the thought of me sickened her and made her angry. I knew she was upset, and I was a bit upset, but I didn't let it get to me. I know she cared about me. A couple more weeks go by, and we seem to be back on track now, and things were going well the past few days. Then today, she had therapy, and while we were lying in bed just a little while ago, she told me therapy went well, and oh, my therapist thought you wanting to live alone was silly too. I responded good-humoredly, saying I thought it was unprofessional her therapist offered an opinion on that at all. She flipped over and now won't talk to me. I tried explaining how hurtful it was to have my feelings invalidated like that, and she claims to understand and even articulated it. She still won't talk to me though, and she said she doesn't want to talk about it anymore. She's tired of it, and tired of fighting about it. To me, this says she really doesn't care, and I'm more like her emotional support animal than her partner. I have not said this, and this is honestly how I feel. I'm still here, and I haven't left yet because I do love her and I do want things to work out. We otherwise are perfect for each other, which is why this sucks extra hard. Yes, I know we both have a lot to work on individually and probably aren't ready to move in together. I agree. Some of you may even think we have no business dating right now. On that, I disagree. I left out a lot of context because it's too identifying with what I've already said. We both have degrees in psychology and are usually really good at being understanding and trying to stay objective. Story, AITA for wanting to take care of my boyfriend's friend's dog. For wanting to take care of 20 years old, my boyfriend's, Alex, 22 years old, friends, Brody, 26 years old, dog. Hi everyone. Alex and I have been living together in a small apartment for about a year and dating for 2. We have a dog together as well. During the first day of us moving in together, Brody asked if he could crash on our couch due to a failed living arrangement with another friend. He promised it would be for only a week. Him, his dog, and 2 cats all lived with us for 3 months. We very much got tired of it quickly. During this time, he took a trip to Virginia, which is across the country from where we live. I was upset BC he should have been using the money from that vacation to get an apartment. Fast forward to yesterday. Brody recently got a promotion at work which entails moving to Virginia in a few weeks. They decided to take an out-of-town day trip to a lake about an hour and 45 minutes away from the city we live in as a last boys trip. Brody picked Alex up from our apartment in his car. Alex had called me around 5 p.m. asking to get picked up. Turns out, they had gotten pulled over due to an expired registration. Brody also had an outstanding warrant for his arrest in Texas, neighboring state. Alex doesn't have a driver's license and was nervous to drive Brody's car back by himself. My dad and I then took the trip there to pick him and Brody's car up. We didn't get back home until midnight that night. Since we had Brody's car and apartment keys, we've been checking up on his dog and cats periodically today. Brody's dog is a little older and very social, so it made me a little sad to leave her home alone all day long. Since Alex is allergic to cats, I suggested we bring the dog home with us for the time being while Brody's situation gets figured out. Alex immediately said no, saying we're already doing a lot by checking in on them throughout the day on top of taking care of our own dog. Alex is obviously very upset about having been stranded in a different town, but I didn't think it was fair on the animals. He wants nothing to do with Brody, and honestly, I don't either. I reminded him that since we do have his keys, we're going to have to deal with Brody eventually. We haven't heard anything from him since he got arrested. I basically begged to bring the dog home and he eventually said okay, but was not happy about it. I already promised to be responsible for her needs, taking her outside, feeding her, and playing with her. Our dogs get along pretty well. Alex has been very distant and cold towards me since we brought the dog home. I don't think it's the animal's fault for the situation that we're in. I believe dogs need exercise and stimulation. I'm not very close to Brody, but I care for all animals, including his. Story, AITA for not telling my friend that her BF was cheating on her. I am 20 years old, have 2 friends in a relationship, Jordan 19 years old and Caitlin 19 years old. I've known both of them for around 5 years, since we were in school. I'm very close with both of them and have been ever since we met. They've been dating for around a year now, and from my perspective their relationship seemed pretty good, and since we're close they tell me shit all the time. However, a few days ago, I was hanging out with Jordan at a party. Caitlin couldn't come since she was sick at the time. Me and Jordan were drinking and smoking weed throughout the whole party, enjoying ourselves and partying hard. During the party, a pretty attractive girl approached him and started flirting, and to my surprise he started flirting back. I excused myself and left him with her since I felt kinda awkward just standing there, so I went and started hanging out with some other friends. Fast forward to about 2 to 3 hours later, the party dies down and I look for Jordan so we can travel home together. I found him in a bedroom laying next to the girl he was flirting with. Both of them were naked and I made awkward eye contact with them and closed the door right after my highest brain realized what I walked into. I head out to the couch and then a few minutes later he and the girl come out of the room and approach me. The girl starts shouting at me and saying a bunch of crazy shit, calling me a pervert and a few other weird things. I was so high and drunk out of my mind, so I honestly didn't catch most of what she said, and all I remember saying is it was an accident and telling her to calm the fuck down. Jordan tried to defuse the situation and it doesn't work, so we decide to just leave. Meanwhile the girl is still going crazy and saying random shit. We head outside and he begs me not to say anything to Caitlin, saying that if she found out she would dump him, how he was drunk and didn't know what came over him. Once again I was fried, so I didn't even really fully understand that I caught him cheating or anything that was happening, so I just said something like, yeah man, whatever, I don't give a shit. After that we call an Uber and head to our homes. The next day everything kinda came back to me and I realized what had happened the day before, and I decided not to say anything to Caitlin. My outlook on stuff like this is if it's not my business, it's not my problem, so I just keep it to myself and go about my own business. Fast forward to about a week later, Caitlin calls my phone and starts blowing up on me and cussing me out for not saying anything to her about what happened. I play dumb and ask her what happened. She explains that she found out about what happened at the party because the girl Jordan had a fling with turned out to be some psycho who started stalking him after the party. Guess he laid it on her too good anyway. She found them in public at the mall and started a scene, saying that he's cheating on her with Caitlin and asking if their passion never meant anything to him and all sorts of other crazy shit. Anyways, that dumbass bimbo dragged me into it and for some stupid reason mentioned that I found them in bed together and Jordan confirmed it. Anyways, Caitlin cussed me out and said I was a shitty friend and that she never wants to see me or Jordan again. I'm sad now cause I feel like I've completely lost a friend who was really close to me, and am wondering if I should have said something to her or if I was right to just mind my own business. Story: AITA for breaking up with my GF because she does not respect my one rule. For breaking up with my GF because she won't respect my one rule. Let's dive straight in. My girlfriend always seems to forget my one rule while I am traveling for work. We have been on and off for 2 years. Things have been going very good, so good in fact that after 5 months of no drama we decided to move in together. Once finally moved in, I informed her of my one rule: to never be alone with a male inside the house. No other rules. I am not a controlling guy. I didn't care who she went out with, how long she was out, where she went. Because I knew she was coming home to me. In my mind, I'm gonna give blind trust until I have a reason not to. I have a reason for this rule. During my time in the military, I was married to a 2-cent gutter slut that called herself my wife. I trusted her word to a fault. I couldn't believe she would lie, much less cheat on me, but she did a lot. Fast forward again through 5 years of being a boy, I meet this beautiful girl, 30 years old. We can summarize and say I fell for her, etc. She moves in, I tell her my rule, and at the same time, I shit you not, I told her I have cameras all around the outside of my house. Again, I travel for work and have to have people check on my house while away and like to see who is coming and going. I told her there are no cameras inside, I would never invade anyone's privacy, but they are there. A little about my girlfriend. She is spunky, fun, outgoing, charming and absolutely gorgeous. Thus she gets a lot of attention on social media. This has never been an issue for me. Go ahead anyone and try to slide into her DMs. I know who she is coming home to. Maybe I was a little overconfident in retrospect. But to give her some credit, when we first met she was with another guy. I could tell we were into one another, but I wouldn't do what was done to me. So I had told her I couldn't see her anymore. because these things had happened to me and would never see that happen to another guy. She agreed and we parted ways until she had broken up with that guy, then got together. She moved in. Boom, back to the present. Everything is great, I am so in love, but it was time for me to travel for some training in Cali. I get there and after a few weeks, she comes to see me. We had a fight while she was with me and it didn't get resolved before it was time for her to leave. 2 days later, I woke up to notifications on my camera system. At 11 p.m. There was this bigger dude I had never met, walked right up to my front door and walked in. He went in and out throughout the night to smoke cigarettes. Then left at 6 a.m. I was floored, there was nothing from my GF, no word, no explanation. So I called her and confronted her. She said it was just her friend had just come over because she wanted to smoke some herb and then he couldn't drive because he was too messed up. I asked what about my one rule and her response was, oh yeah, I didn't think that applied at night. Okay, now listen, I've done all this before. I know the lies, I know the manipulation, but I am head over heels for this woman. I want to believe her, but how can I? I only had the one rule and it seems like she doesn't respect me at all, doesn't seem apologetic, eye-rolling sarcastic response saying it'll never happen again. I come home from training, am only home for 2 days and we get into another fight right before I have to leave again. I was honest, I told her I was harboring feelings of resentment because I didn't believe her. Fight didn't get settled and I leave for the West Coast again for work. First weekend I am gone, I start getting calls, texts, and pictures from our mutual friends, all asking me if we had broken up, because she is acting really different. As well as, posting way too much provocative content on social media. Again, normally this wouldn't have bothered me, I'm a secure person. However, one of the videos was her describing my insecurity, my one rule, and how she always ends up with insecure men. We were still fighting and I was trying to let her have some space, so I decided to not say anything. Well, the next morning, I see a different strange man step out my back door. I thought, what? Who is this? I didn't see him come in. I message my GF and ask if she has anything she wants to tell me. She quickly responds with a story of how this was her friend's BF, and he was carpooling with her and her friend downtown to go to the pool and they were going to drop him off at his GF's house. I asked how he got there and in and out without triggering my cameras. She first says it was his friend that dropped him off, but then it was her friend, who had dropped him off and her friend had gone to the store and was on her way back. Yeah, I called bullshit too. She then tries to say she thought it didn't count against the rule because it was during the day. After this incident, I was told I was being paranoid and we didn't talk the rest of the day because she went to the lake for a girl's day. 3 days went by while I collected my thoughts and wrote them down. I confronted her and told her I wanted to break up, between talking about my insecurities behind my back and the lack of respect for my one rule. I thought it best we went our separate ways. She is now desperately clinging to our relationship, saying she can regain my trust, however I don't think it's possible. My trust in her is gone and I don't think it's possible to get it back. I feel had because she moved in and is saying she has nowhere to go. I told her I would sleep on it, but I am adamant. Story, AITA for being mad when my fiancé doesn't try to satisfy my fantasies. I am 32 years old, have been in this relationship with 32 years old my fiancés for almost 2 years. I know the title sounds crappy, but bear with me. When I first met her she was extremely sexual, I mean sending me pictures of her and her kink life, doing things with other men, role-playing, etc. I for one was never able to dabble in that. I am not cis and grew up very traditional, probably doesn't matter, but for the story's sake. I was okay with it, and still am, but I was under the impression she was very sexual by nature. I was not, so I figured, perfect, we can explore together. 2 years in and now we live together. We've talked about our turn-ons etc., but we've fallen into this weird phase where depending on my hormones I feel very submissive, not all wear women's clothing etc., but my love language is acts of service. I see her as my queen, it makes sense and turns me on to do as she says etc. I do everything around the house, I cook, clean, laundry, I make her dinners and make sure when she gets home from work everything, and I mean everything is taken care of. I work from home and find time not a big deal. I grew up very independent and love to help where I can. I guess my issue is that I've relayed to her that I would love to have more time with her and maybe exploring a more intimate part of it. A more kinky side, if you will, where I maybe have to ask for permission for certain things and she denies me, etc. Nothing crazy, just you can't do this till this is done type of things. We've talked about it, she says she's into it, she says she wants to try it, but it never happens. At this point I'm tired of asking for it. She's going to school and building her business, so I understand she is short of time and I try to bring it up on her off days, but instead she's on her phone or decides to go to bed early. I get it, she's tired, don't get me wrong, but there's times where I am tired and still make an effort. I feel dumb mentioning this over and over, only reason I do is because she says she's into it, but her actions don't match her words. For we talked about doing some intimate stuff tonight and I expected her to take the lead as I have mentioned, but instead she said she was going to bed, and when I went up to bed 10 minutes later she was asleep and disregarded me. I love her, I just wish she would live up to her words or tell me the truth off the bat. Story, AITA for calling the police on my ex who threw away my things without telling me. My former 19 years old boyfriend and I am 19 years old separated a few months ago, and it was on bitter terms from his end. I attempted to communicate about the situation as it could easily have been resolved, but to no avail. I gave up eventually on that part eventually, but at this point he was still in possession of my belongings. This included a digital single-lens reflex camera containing an SD card that has very important memories of family members that have passed on, that I've since lost contact with, and other major life events. As a result, I have been attempting to contact him to retrieve my things. He initially told me that had 2 weeks to collect my things before he'd throw them away May 21st, but he lives quite far from me and I was also in an exam period. I asked him therefore to hold on to my belongings at least until the end of my exams. I gave him the date June 21st that I would become available so that I could make arrangements to collect them. He told me then that he'd block me after I came to collect my things, which I understood but took to mean that he'd acknowledged my request. He'd then go back and forth arguing and getting upset about the relationship situation and sending numerous angry messages, so eventually I stopped responding for my own sake. This then led to him removing me on all social media, so I blocked him on there as some of my accounts are public and I'd rather he be put off watching what I was doing or posting. The main medium of communication we used was text messaging, so I of course kept that available in case he needed to contact me regarding me collecting my things, and after not hearing anything, I decided to contact him myself to ask if I could pick them up on the 13th of July. I was met with a lot of anger and hostility and was then consequently blocked. My friends offered to come with me to attempt to pick up my things from his address directly by asking the front desk of his apartment building to contact him, as he would be keeping my things without my consent. At the time he wasn't in, so seemed to have agreed to leave my belongings with reception, so I left my details so I could be contacted to collect them. He then went on to call reception back after I left to claim that I was his stalker and shouldn't be allowed on the premises. I also received some abusive messages from what I assume are friends of his and over 30 anonymous calls within an hour after this. I then called the police to report the incident as it was a last resort, and they told me that unless he admits that he's either in possession of the item, has disposed of it, or has sold it, they couldn't do anything. They recommended that I contact him to give him a formal notice of 14 days to return my belongings, and he then admitted that he has disposed of them without my consent or knowledge as of 3 weeks after the 2 weeks given sometime around June 11th, and without agreeing to a date on which I could collect my things. As he's now admitted to disposing of my belongings and identified in his messages that I'm the owner, the police let me know that they will be contacting both me and him regarding my camera. Have I done the right thing here? What could I do now? I'm still distraught about the loss of those memories, but could I get some retribution given my situation? Story, AITA for expecting my husband to come to a family event instead of a cricket game. Hubby, 34-year-old, and I, 31-year-old, got married 2 years ago and we now have a beautiful 6mo baby girl. It was a contentious marriage, to say the least. He comes from a Bangladeshi Hindu family, and I come from a Pakistani Muslim family. Despite both of us being atheist, my family cut me out of their lives when we got married. Since giving birth, they are coming around and have started inviting my husband and I to family events and gatherings. Let me give you some context about our families and my husband's love for cricket. There has always been a double standard when it comes to our families. I am to try my very best to make his happy. I was too ID to pretend I am Indian Christian, so I do. I am learning to speak Bangla so I can communicate with his family. I participate in all of their ceremonies, even religious, attend all of his family events even if I need to reschedule work commitments. I call his family every day so they can see our daughter. His family is very kind to me in their own way, and I'm sure there more I should do, but I genuinely try my hardest to make his family feel as welcome as I can. On the flip side, my husband has let my sister stay with us, says hi when my sisters come over and never stops me from spending time with my family, but whenever we go to see them, he does not want to. He says that my family are not trying hard enough to welcome him, despite him turning down numerous invitations by them. They are not warm enough to him, they did not call him to invite him directly. Gatherings may get too religious, even though they are not religious events. He will say he has so much work to do that he cannot attend, or he doesn't want to go to events where he doesn't know many people. He isn't comfortable, and for me to expect him to make an effort with my family regardless is a sign of disrespect to him. My husband is crazy about cricket. Even after having our baby, he would play 2 cricket games and attend 2 to 3 cricket training sessions a week. It's something he is very passionate about, and we often have to plan things around his cricket commitments because they usually take priority. He says he looks forward to playing cricket all week and that he needs it for his mental health and to feel good. He skipped games before when his parents have visited and we have taken them sightseeing, but he tries his best to avoid skipping it. 2 particular events takes place on Sundays when he usually plays games. For the second event, V said he wouldn't go and I declined the invitation on his behalf. However, the first one, he agreed to come to, not realizing it was on a Sunday. He has since realized it and doesn't want to be made to skip his cricket game as he is only playing 1 game a week now. He sulked, so I said I lied to my family and said I had messed up the schedule and he can't make it. I may be the asshole for putting him in a situation that disrupts his pursuit of a peaceful life, his primary goal, and asking him to forego something he enjoys for a day. However, am I the asshole for expecting him to simply get over it and attend the gathering? Story, Wibda for thinking my girlfriend blames her ADHD for everything and it is starting to affect our relationship. I'm 18-year-old and I have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, who is also 18, for around 10 months. For some background information, I have a close male friend whom I'll call Jay. He used to have feelings for me when we first met, but I turned him down. Despite this, we remained friends. A few months later, I started dating my friend's friend, who is now my girlfriend. When we first started dating, I told her that I was not open about being bisexual to anyone besides my close friends. However, my girlfriend is open about her sexuality. At first, I told her that I didn't want anyone at school or the teachers to know about my sexuality because my parents were not aware of it. Despite this, she ended up telling the teachers and some of my classmates anyway. When I confronted her about it, she said it was because of her ADHD, so I decided to let it go. About 3 months ago, people at my school started asking if Jay and I were a couple. Even though we're both in relationships, they're surprised when we say that because every time they see us hanging out and laughing, they think we're a couple. My girlfriend keeps bringing up how people in our grade think Jay and I should date, and it's starting to get on my nerves. I always assure her that nothing will happen between Jay and me because we don't have feelings for each other. I always make sure to tell her I love her, but she keeps talking about it and it's starting to bother me. Because it's all she ever talks about. But I tell her the same thing every time, that I do not have feelings for him but only her. My girlfriend seems more interested in my body than in who I am. She often makes sexual comments about my body, and when I ask her to stop, she continues. When I talk to her about this behavior, she blames it on her attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Additionally, when she gets jealous of me spending time with my close friend, Jay, she becomes physically aggressive with me or him and demands that he move away from me. Even when he complies and sits somewhere away from her, she still insists that he move. When I ask her about this, because he is both of our friends, she causes a scene in class or calls out to the teacher until my friend leaves to find another seat all the way in the back of class. Once, when I was joking about making out, she said that we really should because we haven't, and she called me boring. I felt pressured to do it with her even though I didn't want to because I didn't want to be seen as boring. And when summer started, she never texted me anymore, and when she did, she asked me for nude pictures of myself. I told her no multiple times until I said I was uncomfortable with it. After that, she texted me a couple of times and then just stopped. She hasn't texted me since. Which she also blames on her attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And with all the time alone to ponder my relationship with her, I'm starting to feel like I don't want to be with her anymore. But I have never had these thoughts before. Am I the jerk for thinking like this? Story: AITA for breaking up after 6 years and getting into a relationship a year and a half later. A guy my ex hated. I am 21 years old, got into a relationship with 22 years old my ex when we were 13 and 14. It was good for 6 months before he started acting insecure and possessive. He was jealous of my childhood male best friend and constantly accused me of wanting to leave him for someone better looking. He never made time for me, and his friends pretended to be him to flirt with me, which he dismissed after I told him about this. Despite all this, I stayed with him for a year and a half because I was deeply in love. During that time, I became depressed, isolated, and always waiting for his acknowledgement. A major incident occurred when he called me a slut in front of everyone at our school. I stopped talking to him, but after 2.5 months, I forgave him because he begged it wasn't said about me. He improved, but often brought up my lack of trust in that situation and should have forgiven him sooner. Eventually, 22 years old my childhood ex-best friend got involved in our relationship, so much so that my ex trusted her more than me. This made me uncomfortable, especially since he always criticized me for talking to male friends. The relationship became so toxic that I ended up on antidepressants. In university, I made a small group of friends. My ex started feeling threatened by one male friend. My ex-best friend always found a reason to bring that guy up in front on my ex, and he demanded I stop talking to him. Despite my small social circle, my ex became increasingly controlling, even being intimate without my consent. Eventually, he broke up with me after 6 years because of my friendship with this male friend, and my ex-best friend sided with him. After a year, my university friend and I grew closer and were attracted to each other, and we started dating 5 months ago. This relationship has been the most peaceful I've experienced, but I sometimes feel guilty and wonder if my ex's accusations were true. I've kept this new relationship secret from those close to me because it feels too soon for them to know. Story: AITA Unbelievable. Hello, I wanted to see other people's opinions that are non-biased to my situation. First of all, I have 2 sisters and I am the middle child, 24 years old. My mom has been changed into a different person over the years due to a lot of grief and trauma. Her parents died at the same time when my sister and I were little. My oldest sister's daughter, my mom's granddaughter, died in 2017. Needless to say, we all have had some type of mental issue within our family, but it has taken a toll significantly on her the most. At times, I feel bad for her and want to help her. But sometimes, I am confused and do not want a relationship with her because of her toxic behavior. She has isolated herself and is reclusive to her dark bedroom. My dad and her are still married, but they have talked about divorcing each other more than ever these past couple of years. Recently, I just moved into a house from an apartment. She had a hand-me-down couch from my oldest sister that was in the upstairs bonus room. No one ever goes up there. I asked if I could have it, and she said yes. I go over there with my boyfriend to go get the couch, but I asked to just make sure the house is clean before we come over. It is always a mess, borderline hoarding. She did not clean anything up, and there were trash bags in the way of where we were supposed to bring down the couch. However, this did not bother me, because I was used to putting up with stuff like this. I smiled and said, "No worries." Anyways, let's flash forward to my boyfriend and I taking the couch to our new house. It sickens my stomach to even text this story out. But we flip the couch over to make it easier to get it inside. I see a hole under the couch. I think to myself, that's odd. Why is there a hole? 2 seconds later, a plethora of socks, mittens, and other small clothing items are falling out of this hole. Then, rat droppings start falling out. It was clear as day that this couch was housing a rat nest. Both of us, my boyfriend and I, were disgusted and took it straight to the trailer to take it to the nearest dump. I was sad, disgusted, and I could not believe that my family was living in such filth. Story, AITA for being with someone I wasn't sure about. We both are international students and we met when I moved in the other room of the place he was living in. We have so many interests in common and he is a golden soul. I love spending time with him and so does he. I genuinely care about him and I tried to vocalize whatever is going on in my head multiple times and even tried going no contact, impossible because we live under the same roof. I am going to absolutely honest here and say that currently I am not ready to be committed and have a relationship or even date. Whenever I tried doing the above for his sake, it backfired by me getting overwhelmed and burnt out. I have been unfaithful and so has he. Before I started dating him, I gave him a full disclaimer that I am not ready for a relationship or even dating, but I think he didn't pay heed to that. Every time I would break up, I would go to this other FWB for a hookup and it would hurt my housemate a lot. Once we were dating and I made out with a guy in my university, but guilt overwhelmed the living shit out of me, so I came home and was honest about the whole making out ordeal and all the problems I had in my mind with our situation. Now his unfaithfulness, he went for a vacation for a month, and right before leaving he confessed that he loves me. I was a bit mad at this, as the time and place he confessed fueled the living shit of my separation anxiety and peace in general. I was mad at him for 3 or 4 days and then things kinda settled. We would talk regularly on call and nothing seemed off. He told me about 2 weeks of coming back from his vacation that he had hooked up multiple times when he was away. Even though I had also cheated, I told him not to expect absolute loyalty, as currently I am not that person, even though I want to be a loyal person forward in my life, but I also told him that he will get unparalleled honesty from my side irrespective of whatever happens. Now the thing which bugs me is that he hit it with such precision and acted like everything was normal. We both have taken care of each other when the other wasn't in a good space. Every time I talk about him cheating, he brings up my past hookups, logically fair enough, and that shuts me up in the moment, but still my mind isn't at peace with it. He then told me why he cheated. His actual words were, "It got me free dental treatment." I was just shook. After processing this statement of his, I asked him, "So you basically somewhat prostituted yourself after you told me you love me?" He took offense at the prostitution statement and totally flipped it on me. I apologized and didn't talk about it again. Him being so caring and loving all the time and still ending up doing this really caught me off guard and hurt me real bad. He gets really messed up whenever I form healthy distance for my sake, as he has formed a sense of being codependent on me emotionally and physically. He comes home and I sometimes make him something to eat and I like taking care of him at times, but when I need to clear my head and have some space and time for myself, he absolutely loses it, keeps taking the blame on himself, and I have to go back to that nurturing role to regulate him. I really want to get out of this situation, but I cannot move out as I have landed a job very close to where I live. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.